of a place where a weeb will never get harmed. It's where they can drop the normie act and unleash their inner geeky selves. It's where you get to be in the presence of fellow otaku-minded people. People who specifically obsess over anime, games, cartoons, pop culture, and anything geeky. You can also dress up as your favorite character and act like them, though it's a bit expensive to get into. If you're a regular congoer, you may find yourself browsing through the booths and buying yourself pretty art prints, merch, and taking pictures of cosplayers whom you might never see again, unless you get their socials or ask for a cosplay card. Sometimes there will be a popular figure who guests in these events to perform or share their crafts. And don't forget the goofy contests and performances you can watch if you just want to sit down and be mesmerized. The possibilities are endless, so after a day of walking around in uncomfortable cosplay shoes, you'll flop on the floor, complain your feet hurt, and say, "Let's do it again." If everything goes well. These are known as cosplay conventions or comic-cons. As the years pass, there seems to be a spike in these conventions. Before the pandemic, we usually get around 10 or so cons per year in the whole country, and they all stand out in their own way. But right now, it's like every week there are cons in different venues around the metro and in the provinces, and it's just... I'm happy that we have more opportunities to attend these events, but I guess at this point, I'm burnt out? Not in a way that I'm sick of cons, but more of because of some events that turned into chaos. So here, I'll let you on my journey on attending cons over the years. I've been a long-time fan of watching anime and cartoons and playing games on both console and PC ever since I was a kid. If classes were suspended, I'd continue watching the morning cartoons on TV instead of sleeping. The internet was still young back then, so I would need to use an early dial-up card just to get connected to YouTube or play Flash games. I remember how I got multiple viruses trying to download anime in my own time instead of searching Anime Episode 1, Part 1 of 3, English subs in 240p on YouTube, translated by a fan sub. It got to a point where I would join chorus groups on YouTube and do song covers with them, and it was truly a peaceful time to be a kid who's into this geeky stuff, especially surrounding anime. Then, I stumbled upon this cosplay, or costume play. I don't know how it happened, but I guess I was just into Vocaloid, Hatsune Miku, Kingdom Hearts, or on High School Host Club that I was able to find somewhere in the deepest parts of the internet about this cosplay. And that started my binge watching of cosplayers in YouTube, mostly Vocaloid, Kingdom Hearts, cosplayers doing skits or dances. That goes without saying, I was also the unsupervised innocent child who was having fun watching my interests. Eventually, I came across this website called cosplay.ph where cosplayers would post their cosplays and share how they made these costumes. Those were the times where it was so common to have your costume tailored or bought from that bootleg shop. I also got to know Alodia, one of the pioneers of cosplay in our country, and just browse her cosplays and be in awe of how cool she is. With my newfound knowledge and obsession building up, I started attending conventions in 2009 when the internet culture was starting to get popular. That time, the only events that I knew were Ozenfest, based from my Otakuzine magazine collection, Philippine Cosplay Convention, or basically any cons that happen in SM Mega Mall. I would always force my family to go to SM Mega Mall whenever I knew there was an event because I was just a little scrawny kid who relied on her parents' money and safety to travel. As I grew older, I began attending events independently and with my friends. I was so happy with my newfound independence, sharing my weirdness to more people as the number of cons every year also grew and upgraded. I also frequented cons held in SMX because it's bigger and organizers started bringing in international performers and guests. Definitely the cons that I look forward to were Cosplay Mania, the Best of Anime, Asia Pop Comic Con, and Ozenfest. When I reached the ripe stage of corporate life, I don't attend these events and cosplay as much anymore because I work the mid-shift and I wasn't watching any anime and playing games anymore. But I sure do always miss cosplaying and shopping for anime goods. But if there was an event that invited a very popular artist that I like, then I would go. but only for the artist. The side quest is the artist alley. Of course, not every con I attended was perfect, but I do keep tabs of the notable cons that gave me a bad time, like when a band performed in a con and the organizer suddenly f***ed up the seating arrangements. A con in SMX got cancelled last minute and people were protesting on Facebook and actually went on the day itself out of spite, but they were just hanging outside the mall. The long lines during summer cons because students are on vacation. And that's all that I remember about pre-pandemic cons. My age is probably catching up to me and mellowing me down, but I sure as hell didn't grow out of my old interests. And I'm still the same dork. Come pandemic, I guess something magical happened during this time period that made every bored normie finally consume anime and games. And to think that these were the same people who ridiculed otakus when they were younger. There was the rise of games like Among Us, Genshin, Valorant, alongside the rise of streamers, VTubers, and content creators making stuff surrounding their old and newfound interests. Plus there's Discord, one of the convenient places to hang out, play games with friends, talk about interests, build an online community, or maybe even find yourself a Discord sweetheart. It was really a time of consuming the internet almost 24/7 and hanging out in Discord calls until 5 a.m., among others. I started streaming and going on my content creator journey during this time as well. Fast forward to 2021, physical stores and businesses were slowly opening up again with strict health and safety regulations, of course. I think that year, we started having cosplay conventions running again, though everyone was still encouraged to practice social distancing and wear face masks. And since that time, I was so into Genshin until now. I was so thrilled finally seeing Genshin cosplayers and of course other fandoms too, but gosh, Genshin has me on a chokehold. Like, it was so nice to be surrounded by that kind of atmosphere again after so long that it inspired me to cosplay again, mainly because of Hu Tao. Come early 2022, I firmly decided to buy my first cosplay in years and cosplay with my friends on day 2 of Cosplay Carnival. So I bet you all know what happened during the first day of that event. It was not the best experience, especially for a first-timer. Due to the health and safety regulations, the organizers had to limit the number of people coming inside of the venue, which eventually evolved into a line con. Like, the line was so bad. People waited for 2 or more hours with the risk of getting sick in the middle of the pandemic. Fortunately, the organizers were kind enough to open more of the venue halls for day 2 con-goers. Though I really felt bad for the day 1 con-goers, and I guess that kind of puts day 1 of cons in a bad light. Hopefully not for long. Until then, more and more conventions have popped up and lined up in a series too. Most of them were small and held in different parts of the country, like in the provinces, which is really good, so you don't have to go all the way to the city capital just to experience a con. I haven't really attended a con in the provinces, so I don't really have an opinion, but maybe one day just for funsies. Moving on to 2023, I don't know why, but something just clicked that year that really made me burnt out with attending conventions. There were anime conventions or comic-cons held every week, and it's not like I have all the time, energy, motivation, and money to go. These events even overlap often across the metro. You know, there's this thing in economics called the law of diminishing marginal returns, where the more you consume, the more that you're gonna get tired of it. And that's what's happening. As a con-goer with limited budget, I just can't go to these events all the time. Plus, they're mostly exactly the same anyways. For artists and vendors, it can be a good thing and bad thing because they at least have more chances to booth. But downside is, there may not be enough customers because they are scattered everywhere in different cons. But what made me turned off with attending cons now is, aside from the surplus of cons, there's also the overall experience of recent popular cons. Because for some reason, 2023 felt like a face-off of who is the worst convention of the year. Like before, there weren't extremely long lines that reached the outside of the building, tight restrictions that didn't make sense, unclear and ever-changing instructions, especially when it comes to meet and greets. And you know what's worse? Overselling tickets that put people's lives at risk. While not all cons are inherently bad just because of one bad experience, organizers should at least take proper accountability for the troubles and confusion they caused for the con-goers if there were. Imagine we pay over 80% from our one-day minimum wage salary for these events, and you're telling me that I did not get what I paid for? What's worse is if I paid for VIP ticket, I don't get all of the VIP benefits? Moving on. I also sympathize with the vendors and most especially the small artists for paying gold on artist tables only to be left in the dark by the organizers because the floor plan wasn't planned properly. Like, how could you do this to my favorite part of a con? Like, it's sad to see that artists themselves have to do everything instead of the organizers helping them gain proper publicity and foot traffic on the day of the con. Also, the tables cost a fortune now compared to the past years. Inflation really is driving us hard every year, and it's not like we are also raising our product prices to be on par with the rest of the world. Personally, it is bad news for me as an artist who has plans of starting to booth because then I have to be extremely picky on where I want to booth. Despite these first-hand and second-hand negative experiences, I'd still attend conventions because sometimes I really just want to be surrounded by dorks, cosplay, meet friends whom I don't see on a regular basis, buy art, and meet my favorite guests. It is also just a safe place to be publicly a dork, minus being a creep. Anything but the creeps, please. Shoo them away, please. The negatives might be a lot, but I also have some wishes for future conventions that I think would make cons more exciting, at least for me. It would be great if there were more big events that handle specific niches, like Pokemon, last PokeCon 2023. While having a big general event once every quarter is good, focusing on a specific audience make a breath of fresh air. So far, these kinds of niche events only happen in small venues, sometimes inaccessible if you don't have a car too. So it would be great if there was a bigger one, that is, if there was more demand for it. Number 2, change program activities for every con. Like, I wish they weren't the same all the time if they happen every week. I get that some activities like the cosplay competition and singing competition are crowd favorites, but having a different activity for each con, such as educational stuff or panel talks, is not bad too, especially if you have international guests. Though when you think about it, this will also depend on the venue. So it might not apply all the time, but I wish it could be different sometimes, you know. And this brings me to my final wish. I wish we had better convention centers, logistics, and mostly transportation in my country. Because these can heavily impact the kinds of cons we can hold. You really need huge willpower to even go to these events, at least for my aging self. Like, why must we suffer? So this is why you should vote wisely during elections. At the end of the day, we all just want to enjoy the con in our own silly ways, both as con-goers and vendors. Whether it's taking pictures with cosplayers, buying pretty little trinkets, or just inhaling sweaty weebs.
Anyways, I'm just sharing why I don't attend that much cons. But I still will attend some in the future. It's just not frequently, like every week or every month. Maybe like once every quarter. Or like depending on the guests and event. Or if it's a niche that I like. And it's not really that bad. It's really just I'm burnt out with the overconsumption. So I'd rather just spend my money somewhere else.
Anyways, happy cosplaying and attending events. See you around for the next video.